Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Azam. As you would have seen from the thumbnail, it's another Supra video. This time we're reviewing a SRD engine undertray. So with that said, let's jump in and show you what's what. Right guys, so you can see on the floor we've got the cooling tray element. So this is the front half that sits underneath the radiator. There is an engine belly pan, which I might put on later on, it's inside. But basically this is the last cooling mod that we've got put in the car. And the idea is it will help trap the air so that when it goes in through the front, it doesn't follow the path of least resistance, where currently it will just go completely straight at the bottom. It has no way to channel that flow. What this will do is effectively put a layer at the bottom so that when the air comes in through the front, it cannot disperse in the path of least resistance. It will be forced through the intercooler, through the engine oil cooler that SRD have also installed for me, and ultimately into the radiator. So this altogether should, fingers crossed, keep the temps down on the track. So I'm expecting this to be a 80% fit. Reason behind it is obviously pre-drilled, etc., but every Supra is going to be slightly different. So I've got a different intercooler setup from the next Supra guy, for example, so I'm going to expect some slight modification, but basically let's see how good this fits, and ultimately in a few weeks time will it make a difference on the track. So guys, this is the first bit that we're going to be starting with. Now you might be thinking at this point, why have I gone for aftermarket undertray? Reason being, as soon as you put a front mount intercooler on the Supra, it hangs lower, so the stock undertray doesn't fit. So the only option you really have is to go aftermarket or cut your stock undertray. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but this car didn't have an undertray when I bought it, so for me this is the first undertray going on it. So we're going to install this piece first. Let's get underneath and see what's what. Right guys, so we're underneath the car. I've had to switch to GoPro to give you guys a better view and a better angle, but basically you can see my lip goes into the bumper retainers clips and it's sandwiched between. So you've got the 3 bolts, 1, 2 and 1 that I've already removed over there. So basically what's going to happen is, if I just grab the undertray, you can see there, right? So that's effectively how it's going to line up. 1, 2 and then the third one over there that I showed. And basically the reason why this isn't sitting flush at the moment is because, like I mentioned, up here you can see the intercooler bracket bolts are basically hitting it, right? So that's the modifications that I said that we'll need to do. So you can see I've got a bracket on that side holding my intercooler, and also one on this side over here as well, right? So the other thing to note is my screws or bolts coming through, I've noticed they're not going to be long enough, so I'm going to have to change these out. So I'm just going to take the tray away. So you get the idea. What we're going to have to do is take this off later and then put a hole through it, put the bracket back on, so that the bracket effectively sits outside the undertray. That will allow the whole undertray to sit more flush. And then you've got the back holes up here which line up as well pretty well. So first thing I'm going to do is take these off and put longer screws through, and then we'll mount it back up, bolt it as best as we can, and then figure out how we mark this and cut this holes for these intercooler brackets. Right, so you can see got the longer ones through, so this should now stick out nicely once the panels clicked back in. So let me just take this one off. Alright guys, so you can see I've basically got it in. It's pretty solid. Obviously when I put this on final, I will put an extra washer here, because you can see the nuts that were on the RMM lip are slightly smaller than the undertray holes, so just to keep it nice and secure, we'll put washers on afterwards. This now gives me enough room to come up here and have a look and see exactly where it's touching. So you can see it's catching there and there, and then eventually, hopefully, this hole won't need too much modification. It will line up okay. But I think the first step, what we're going to have to do is mark this bolt, the location for it on the undertray, so we know roughly where to drill and make this bigger. So best way to do this, guys, is if you've got nail polish lying around at home, nick your wife's, your girlfriend's, whatever, just basically dab a bit on there, and then all we're going to do is press up against it and it'll give us a rough mark for where we need to drill. So guys, you can see there I marked it out, so I put a bit of red nail polish on it just so it's easy enough to see. Now what we're going to do is just press up against it enough to get a bit of a paint marks against it, right? So it's just going to be a rough guide, but what it will allow us to do is figure out the outer edge for where we're going to basically drill the holes. Right guys, so it's off the car. You can see there we've got a mark, and also there we've started drilling. That's basically the outer edge of the screw. So what I know is the end of the hole needs to be roughly in line with that, so that we can poke everything through. So all I'm going to do is, using one of these cone shaped drill bits, shout out to Dad, he's always got these random tools lying around. What I'm going to do is basically go through here, widen the hole enough so that we can basically take the bracket off and put it on the other side of this once it's all bolted. So there you go guys, nice and perfect. You can see basically it's all done. I might make that a little bit bigger. We'll see once we get back on the car. So where you can see this one's relatively okay. I'll just need to make the hole a little bit bigger and then we'll drop through. This one, you can see my hole's a little bit off, but shouldn't be an issue. All I've got to do is widen it, and I've marked which side to widen. And then I've just had a look up here and everything seems to be lining up okay. There's just, this one might need a bit, but I'm going to try and get away without it. And then this one needs a little bit on the left, just to make sure that everything lines up perfectly. So let me give that a go and then we'll come back and see how it fits the second time around. Right guys, so the first center chunk's on. You can see the bracket I put back from underneath, secured it, and then the outer screws here, we just went through the outside to hold the undertray up. This one used the original screw, but this one was a bit too far away, so the same screws or bolts that I used at the front, the extended ones, I just put it in there and it bit well, just put a washer there, but you can see it's nice and solid now. Like I said, touched on earlier, I did end up making these holes a little bit bigger. Now, all that's left now, guys, is effectively getting this piece over here and closing up the sides of the front of the bumper. So what we're going to do is, you can see you've got the two threaded holes already on the undertray here and here. And then what you can see, I'll try to show you, but effectively that piece or the side bit needs to go over the top, and then you're going to bolt them in. So once that's on there, I'll need to figure out how the rest of these go in. You can see they're slightly off, but this being plastic, there should be enough give in there. So let me just give that a go, bolt these in and see how I get on. Right guys, so here's our update. We've also got that nice and tight. These are the two that I showed you before, so that's the supplied screws or bolts, kind of small Allen bolts, and then with the supplied washers as well, so that's in nice and tight. The only bit that I seem to find so far that's well off is this bit here that is supposed to go and screw into the arch liner, right? So that's been a little bit off. And then also above here there was a little plastic clip. I'll see if I can quickly find it. It was basically similar to this one, but it was there, it was a bit too far off. So instead what I did was just again, using these M6 bolts that I bought earlier, just threaded one through the top and just nut and bolt, so it's nice and secure. I'm not going to worry too much about this. So I mean, I could try to force it, but you can see it's still quite a bit off, right? So I could put extra holes through and then basically drop bolts through and then do it. But you can see, guys, look at this for the undertray. It's solid. It's not going anywhere. So that's this side pretty much done. I'm just going to quickly crack on and do it on the opposite side as well, get that all in. Right guys, as you can see, both the corner pieces are on. So this one, and then you've got the main piece in the middle. The next bit now is the belly pan, which I didn't show you earlier because it was indoors, but essentially this just covers the rest of the car, so protects the engine, etc. Not too much to do with the cooling on this one, it's just more for, again, protecting the underside of your car. So it does come, you can buy them individually. I managed to find these on eBay for a pretty good price, so I just bought the pair. So what I'm going to do is just quickly hold this up against there and see how much we're going to have to adjust and flex with. Right guys, so as you can see, it fits pretty well, it lines up nice. You've got your overflow pipe there dropped out, pretty much lines up perfectly. I have noticed that it doesn't look like you can get to the sump plug, which is in my eyes a bit of a design fault, but I guess if you're looking to drain the oil, etc., you should be taking the undertrays off anyway. Other thing I've noticed is some of the holes or the screws or bolts I put through will need to come out and go through this under tray. So you can see one there, one there. You've got your one round this side and then on the opposite side. So I'm going to crack on. It's pretty much everything you've seen so far. So I'm just going to loosen these bolts, slip it back in, bolt them up, and then see how many of the other holes line up. Right, let's just have a quick look at everything now that it's done. You can see the front is all bolted in as it was earlier. Again, just a reminder, those holes I had to make, and they're going to be specific if you've got a front mount intercooler on there, and depending on which front mount intercooler you've got. Then these side pods are in here, nice and completed. These I did have to put in additional, so the holes didn't line up, so I found it a lot easier to just put a longer bolt through and then get a nut on there. Again, I don't think these are going to catch. I'll show you exactly why. You can see it's not the lowest point on the car, so I don't think it's going to catch, but if it does, I can always just cut it down later on, right? So that's all bolted in. There are a few more around here that could potentially line up, but they don't. Come around to the back then, the actual bolts that lined up straight away was this one, and there's one further down there, roughly about there. They lined up pretty well, just took them out, put them back in. And then there were holes that were lining up, but I had no existing fittings, and effectively what I did there was just take the new fasteners out from the pack, screw them in. So you can see, again guys, really nice and solid. So that's pretty much it, guys. It's taken me, I'd say, probably about 3 to 4 hours to get this done, just simply because I had to pop out, get the longer screws, etc. And obviously with filming it takes a little bit longer, but all in all, not bad. I mean, it would have been nicer if some of the screws were longer, but I guess it depends on your car, right? So they can't give you all of that out of the box. Some of the holes I widened, like I said, probably about 20% of them. Really not an issue at all. And yeah, I mean, it's easy enough to do at home. You do have to jack it up quite high, but if you've got in a ramp, it's just all that bit easier. So leave a comment down below whether you think this will actually make any difference to the cooling. I've read from forums, etc., that if you've not got undertray on, that's the most common reason that you're overheating, but time will tell. We're due back on the track in a couple of weeks' time. So hope you found this useful. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.